Kurt to Rayburn, report. I'm required to make a security confirmation. When I call my ship, if you list your personnel, cargo requirements, any special needs.
Star Trek has always stood as a bold exploration of the future, strange worlds, and the deeper questions of humanity. But behind its optimistic vision lies a history filled with controversy, censorship, and episodes that many networks considered far too intense for audiences. And over the decades, certain stories pushed the limits of what television was willing to show so dramatically that they were restricted, delayed, edited, or even completely banned in some parts of the world. Not because they failed creatively, but because they confronted themes that society at the time struggled to accept. And when you take a closer look at these episodes, it becomes clear that their impact came precisely from how fearless they were, beginning with Miri from Star Trek. The original series, which initially appears to be a simple science fiction mystery, as the crew of the Enterprise responds to a distress call from a planet identical to Earth, only to discover a hauntingly empty environment frozen. In time, like a suburban neighborhood from the 1960s where something has gone terribly wrong, and as Captain Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and the landing party explore further, they encounter a horrifying truth when a disfigured man attacks them before dying from a violent seizure, setting the tone for a story that quickly transforms from curiosity into dread, and their meeting with a frightened young girl named Miri reveals a chilling reality in which all the adults have perished from a mysterious disease while the children remain alive, referring to themselves as the onlys and fearing adults whom they call grups. And as the crew begins to notice the same strange purple lesions forming on their own skin, they realize they are infected with the same illness that wiped out the adult population, leading to the discovery that the plague was the unintended result of a life extension experiment gone horribly wrong, creating a society where children age extremely slowly, living for centuries, while remaining psychologically immature, which leads to emotional instability, fear, and eventually violent behavior. And this disturbing combination of disease, immortality, and childlike chaos creates an atmosphere that many viewers found deeply unsettling, especially as the children turn into a desperate mob driven by jealousy and panic, capturing members of the crew and threatening their survival, until McCoy manages to develop a cure in a tense race against time. Yet despite its resolution, the episode left such a strong negative impression on some audiences that when it aired on the BBC it received complaints and was excluded from reruns for years, demonstrating how its themes of decay, madness, and corrupted innocence were considered too disturbing for regular broadcasts at the time. And this pattern of controversy continued with Plato's Stepchildren, another unforgettable episode from the original series that became historically significant not for violence, but for breaking social barriers when it featured Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura sharing what is often cited as the first interracial kiss on American television, a moment that may seem brief by modern standards but carried enormous cultural weight during the 1960s, as the episode's storyline involves a group of powerful individuals who use telekinetic abilities to humiliate and control others, forcing Kirk and Uhura into the kiss against their will, which added an uncomfortable layer of coercion to the already controversial scene. And while network executives feared backlash, particularly from more conservative regions, the expected outrage largely failed to materialize in the United States, suggesting that audiences were more open-minded than anticipated. Yet the situation differed in the United Kingdom, where the BBC chose not to air the episode at all during its initial run, officially citing concerns about the episode's tone and brutality, but widely believed to be influenced by the social sensitivity surrounding the kiss, making it another example of how Star Trek challenged cultural norms in ways that television institutions were not always ready to accept. And the darker psychological edge of the series became even more apparent in Whom Gods Destroy, an episode that places the Enterprise crew in a terrifying situation inside a high-security psychiatric facility on the remote planet Elba II, where the patients have taken control under the leadership of Garth Vizar, a once great Starfleet captain who has descended into complete madness, believing himself destined to rule the galaxy and possessing the ability to shapeshift, which allows him to manipulate and deceive those around him, turning the episode into a tense psychological thriller as Kirk and Spock are captured and subjected to mind games that blur the line between reality and illusion, culminating in a dramatic confrontation where Spock must determine which version of Kirk is real after Garth impersonates him. And the episode's intense portrayal of insanity, combined with moments of sudden violence and emotional instability, led to it being considered unsuitable for younger viewers by the BBC, reinforcing the idea that Star Trek's willingness to explore the darker aspects of the human mind often put at odds with broadcasting standards. And these controversies were not limited to the original series, but carried forward into later iterations such as Star Trek: The Next Generation, which, despite its more polished and philosophical tone, shocked audiences with the episode Conspiracy, where a hidden alien invasion storyline culminates in one of the most graphic scenes in the franchise's history as a character's head explodes under a phaser blast and a grotesque parasite emerges from his body, a moment achieved through practical effects that left a lasting impression of horror and pushed the boundaries of what was expected from a mainstream science fiction show, leading to censorship measures such as later time slots and warning advisories. While the BBC refused to broadcast it entirely due to its disturbing imagery, illustrating how even decades after the original series Star Trek continued to test the limits of acceptable content, and the franchise's boldness extended beyond violence into social commentary with Star Trek: Deep Space Nine and its episode Rejoined, which explored themes of love and identity through the relationship between Jadzia Dax and the widow of her symbiont's previous host, culminating in a same-sex kiss that was groundbreaking for television in the mid-1990s and sparked resistance from certain networks that feared backlash from conservative audiences, leading to edited broadcasts in some regions despite critical acclaim praising the episode's emotional depth and progressive message, proving once again that Star Trek's commitment to representation often placed ahead of its time. Wild to the Death demonstrated another form of controversy by pushing the boundaries of on-screen violence with an intense sequence of hand-to-hand combat that originally featured a high number of deaths, forcing networks to cut significant portions of the scene before allowing to air, which altered the pacing and narrative impact and highlighted the ongoing tension between creative storytelling and broadcast standards. And perhaps one of the most psychologically disturbing examples is The Empath, an episode that relied not on graphic visuals but on the power of suggestion to convey suffering and torture as the crew is subjected to cruel experiments by mysterious beings, with the emotional weight carried through dialogue and performance rather than explicit imagery, creating a haunting experience that lingered in the minds of viewers and led to its delayed broadcast in the UK for nearly 3 decades due to concerns about its unsettling themes. And all of these examples reflect a larger truth about Star Trek as a franchise created by Gene Roddenberry, whose vision was never limited to simple entertainment, but instead aimed to use science fiction as a lens through which to examine real-world issues such as war, racism, inequality, identity, and morality, often disguising controversial ideas within futuristic settings to bypass network resistance, while still delivering powerful messages. And this approach allowed the series to resonate deeply with audiences even when it faced opposition from broadcasters, ultimately contributing to its evolution into one of the most influential and enduring franchises in television history, spanning multiple series, films, and generations of fans, and proving that the very elements that once made certain episodes controversial are the same qualities that have ensured the franchise's lasting legacy, as it continues to inspire discussions, challenge perspectives, and demonstrate that storytelling has the power to push boundaries and shape cultural conversations in ways that extend far beyond the screen.